pretty sure my kids learned how to crawl from a guru somewhere.
From a guru.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Right.
Breaker one-nighter. Get your ears on. Get your eyes on. It's the GMB show, suckers. Santa Fe edition. Team Ryan edition. We've got our Team Ryan shirts on, and this is Ryan.
So he doesn't need a shirt.
He doesn't need a shirt. This is Jarlo. I'm Andy. We are GMB. And for the next 30 minutes plus or minus, we are going to educate, elucidate, and do all kinds of other E words with
And
you.
indemnify. That's an I word, though.
Yeah.
Sounds like E.
You gotta watch out for that. Indemnification isn't really a good thing, though.
Oh, never mind then.
Yeah. Okay. So today we're going to talk about a little bit, since we got all three of us here, we're going to talk a little bit about sort of some of the influences that came into GMB, because we get a lot of people asking us, is that an exercise from gymnastics? Is that from martial arts? Is that from yoga? Is that from this? And, we live in a really interesting time with the internet information age and all this stuff, and there's so much stuff out there, right? So we're able to draw from a lot of sources, and we want to talk about some of the ones that have been especially influential to each of us, that have really filtered into GMB, and because we think that's going to be interesting to know, because people ask us about it, and it means a lot to us that we've been able to learn from some really great people. So we want to talk about that, but first... But first, let's do some questions that people have asked. Earlier today, we did an AMA, which means Ask Me Anything on Reddit. We had a lot of people asking us random questions, and we answered them. But some of the questions that were not answered that we've gotten a lot of lately on email and Facebook that we want to cover, and especially since Jarlo is here and has a little more knowledge on some of this than Ryan and I, we want to ask a couple of sort of injury and rehabilitation related questions. Of course, none of this is medical advice. Mm-hmm. What's been maybe the biggest one lately?
Yeah, pretty much the biggest one is the shoulder question. And in fact, today we were asked that question. But basically, I have some sort of shoulder injury. What are some good exercises for rehab? Also, what are some good exercises for strength building that I could do on the shoulders? I want to start off, Jarlo's going to say this also, but we're not doctors. Yeah. Go get it checked out. Okay? Yeah. That's the first and foremost thing you need to do. All right? But...
Well, and I understand why people reach out to us, too. Because, you have to say, go to your doctor, and it's true. I mean, go to your doctor. I mean, why are you asking somebody over the internet? But I understand why people do it, because either they had a bad experience with the doctors before, or maybe they've already gone and they've gotten here's some pills. Go ahead and shake it off. If that hurts, don't do it, right? And that's not a satisfactory answer for a lot of people.
Or you're not bad enough for surgery.
Yeah.
So just kind of
deal with it. Yeah.
Just deal with it. But one of the primary reasons why we say that is because you don't know what it is. Like, it seems kind of weird to say that it might be cancer, right? Because it's not flippant, though. It might be.
Yeah.
Like, there's a lot of visceral, organ dysfunction, and a lot of, like, major medical things that masquerade as shoulder pain, masquerade as, like, low back pain. Like, for the shoulder in particular, there's, like, diabetes, pancreas stuff. Lots of weird, crazy things. The more you kind of into, you're more a health professional, you understand that, and all of these things. So just get it checked out. And even if the doc does an exam, does a few things, and he said, "Oh, you're fine." Well, at least you're basically fine. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense? And it's
good to know that.
Maybe
right?
structurally okay? Is it like you can, work out at least? And
you can work out at least, and it's not something major. Like, there have been instances where people go in just thinking they have a simple, like, oh, my neck hurts a little bit. And it turns out to be something crazy. Crazy.
It's nice to rule out, like, a blood disease.
That's right. Right.
Right? I mean, you want to rule that out, right?
Exercise,
you know it's not that.
It's not going to fix that.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
A little bit of stretching the right way is not going to do that, right?
No.
But first of all, that's probably the main reason. And another reason is, you want someone in person that could help you. That doesn't mean we can't help you. It doesn't mean like that one person, is going to be the savior and whatnot. But that's basically it. You just have to be safe. Got to take care of yourself. Now, for the shoulder in particular, we did actually a really comprehensive series on that. In our articles, look on the blog. So we explained a little bit about the shoulder, but went really in depth into what you can do. And they had a lot of. It's actually pretty popular.
Yeah.
Like, they had the shoulder flexibility examples, shoulder strength examples, and then the motor control, which is really interesting. And people don't do enough of being strong in certain positions and being able to do certain things. So it's different than just normal kind of basic strength exercises. It's just like doing all the bodyweight things like handstands and cartwheels and all of that. It just conditions you in a different way, and people kind of understand that they have to do that. They have to be strong in a certain position, not just strong in that machine, that rotation, or not just strong in the band. So they have to be able to have that leeway and go into different things. It's really hard to answer a specific thing like, oh, my shoulder hurts. No, it hurts in the front. Oh yeah, that tells me a lot. Thanks. Right? How am I going to do that? But I can lead you in a certain way and give you sort of the tools to kind of figure out yourself. It's never going to be as good as someone else that's there. If I was there, that'd be great. But, that's the basic thing. You got to go see somebody, not just for the reasons of, we don't want to help you or, it's too difficult, but maybe it's something crazy. Hopefully it's not, but sometimes it happens,
Yeah.
And Ryan knows that too. He's had to go in for different things.
Yeah.
Yep.
So one more thing that's kind of Jarler specific here that while we've got you here, I just want to, we've talked before about, our opinions on evidence-based fitness or research-based fitness, and sometimes we even got kind of flip on one of our podcasts. We called it evidence schmevidence, which is actually Jarlo's phrase that we copied. But we don't want people to get the wrong idea that we're anti-research or anti-evidence or any of that.
I actually keep up with it pretty well.
So Jarlo is a real professional, and so you clear it up. Okay.
Well, and that's the thing. Like, it can be easily misconstrued as saying, when we are critical of evidence-based practice or evidence-based fitness, right? What's that? Evidence-based
fitness. I think
that's a kind of a newer thing right now. Yeah. And it's not that we're anti-science, because that's ridiculous. No. Right? Who's anti-science? Right? You can't. We're pro-critical thinking.
Yes.
Right? And you have to understand in research, and this is borne out across the fields, especially in healthcare, research can be very biased. You can I've taken at least 7 semesters of statistics, undergrad and then grad school.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to take that much.
Yes.
And the way you can manipulate the numbers, oh man.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, unbelievable. You talk to...
Math is a fantastic thing.
You talk to people that actually do research and they will totally agree 100%. So if you go in with any kind of bias, any kind of thing that you want to have happen, you can make it happen.
Yeah, it's going to happen.
Now, that doesn't mean we discount things, but you have to look at things critically.
That doesn't mean that the researchers are always pushing a bias.
No. But sometimes that bias is there even when they don't realize it.
Unconsciously.
The way you frame the question, the way you report the data, the way you analyze the data. Now, you can easily go to the extreme in that and say, then that doesn't matter. Then you're talking about the things, and this is fairly controversial, but I believe in it. The vaccines causing autism. I bet you get emails on that, but it doesn't.
Yeah.
It purely doesn't.
No.
There's no way it does.
No.
So you're going to get people saying, oh yeah, the studies say this, but then I have a friend, and okay, I'm going to offend some people, but no, it straight up doesn't.
Yeah.
That's an example of just going nuts over it, right?
Yeah.
But then you have things like, in therapy right now, there's a lot of the evidence-based practice, and it's great. I know all through it. I know all of these clinical prediction rules. I know all of these things, and it's awesome. You have a pattern. You have these things. But it gives you just a general picture of where to go. If you were just to follow these things and not put in your expertise, and that's the part that people forget about evidence-based practice. The first part is where the evidence leads you. The second part is where your clinical expertise and your experience brings into it. And so that's what these guys were talking about in that podcast.
Yeah.
Are you going to discount all of these things that you've found through experience because a study in this said that?
Yeah, and the specific example was the stretching doesn't work thing, or stretching injures you. Well, we've seen thousands of people stretch and get more flexible, but there was a study done on 20 college sprinters that showed that they reduced their power output, therefore stretching doesn't work.
Right.
And that's poor application.
Immediately after stretching, but then they didn't say that, an hour later they were fine.
Yeah,
right?
so I've read the study, you've read the study. We know a lot of people that have not read the study, but draw crazy conclusions.
Yeah. And then, since we're talking about stretching, there's a lot of things that people think stretching does that isn't true. Like they say it prevents soreness or gets rid of soreness. Not true.
No.
I've tried.
If stretching prevented soreness, it would be a beautiful world, right?
Or prevent certain injuries.
Yeah.
I don't think so. What it does is it helps you get into certain positions easier, so you can demonstrate your strength. And it gets into positions where you have that extra leeway. Yeah. So maybe I had the jiu-jitsu example. If you can't get your arm to here and some guy tries to crank it because you're not flexible, that's going to hurt.
Yeah,
right?
You're done.
I'm pretty sure if you were more flexible, that would have prevented that injury, right?
Exactly.
So it's more, and it's not common sense, but it's applying your thinking correctly.
Yeah. Critical thinking. Always critical thinking.
Right?
Excellent.
Putting your experience to the test. And read the studies, see what it goes, try it out, do all these things. No, it's not anti-evidence. It's anti-being a dumb shit.
Yeah, truly.
Right?
Absolutely.
And you got to get on board with that.
Yeah.
How can you not get on board with that?
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. That was good. Super good. Yeah. Really good explanation. So let's talk a little bit about sort of totally changing gears into where a lot of the things come from. And actually some of it does come from evidence and research too, but more specifically I want to talk about sort of some of our teachers that have taught us different things, and most importantly the ones that have come into sort of building up what we call the GMB method, the things that we teach and the foundations of that, because they come from a lot of things. And one of the great things that I think about GMB is that it's not a guru shop, it's not a one-man show. There's three of us, and we've got some common things background, but we've got some very different background that helps us sort of get together and I think make a stronger method altogether. But of course, number one though, Ryan, being the head coach and the number one teacher here, a lot of your background and a lot of what we teach is kind of based on gymnastics.
Right.
So,
yeah, and the interesting thing, the gymnastics part of it, but more so the influence of my first coach, Mark Folger, in the way that he taught me and the way that he interacted with the people who are on my team, and then also the other students that he taught. So it's not just the fact that I was doing gymnastics and I'm taking certain things that we're using in gymnastics, but
you studied his coaching.
His coaching in the way that he did. And something that was I just love about Mark, and Mark is still coaching, very successful team. He's constantly studying, and he's looking at what he can do to make things better and simplify things. Mm-hmm. So instead of just throwing something out there or maybe just sticking just with the same thing that's happened, year after year after year, he's constantly trying things out, testing. That's very important, just like what we do, of course, right? Taking that, testing it on his athletes, and if it works, using it. But understanding that it's not going to work for everyone. And so there's certain things that he'll use with this particular athlete, whereas with this particular athlete, it's different. And so this is something that you'll really find here in GMB is that we're constantly evolving too, because we're always going back and looking at what we can do to be better and how we can help more people. Like, for example, in our Alpha Posse, every person is different, and so there's different ways that you need to coach that particular person. So Mark Folger has been one of the largest influences, not only in just my life, but also in a lot of the way that we program and do things here in GMB. And of course, it's not just me, because there's three of us here, but that's just an example of when I think about what I want to do with the programming and the new things that I want to do. So whether it be using movements that I learned in gymnastics or taking something from, let's say, one of the movements in F2 was a butterfly kick. And so, I took the wushu, the idea of wushu, the butterfly kick, but what I did was went back and looked at how I can better teach it to other people. And from learning from Mark and the way that he actually studies different things, it helped me to look at the butterfly kick in a different way and make a new application that was, I think, a lot better for a lot of people.
Yeah.
So,
cool.
Yeah.
And just to say, because Ryan didn't really preface it, that Mark Folger was your gymnastics coach.
My gymnastics
from
coach.
What age to what age?
When I started, really, it was maybe 6 until all the way throughout high school. And he's still my
coaching.
mentor. Yeah, he still coaches.
He has written several books.
Mm-hmm.
He's been
USA Gymnastics Coach of the Year.
Coach of the year.
Coach of the year. And so he's very well known throughout the United States. So he's not just some dude, some local teaching guy. Gymnastics.
If you're doing gymnastics, you probably know him.
Yeah. And we all have those people, in our life.
Yeah.
Where influences like with you,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be Taito or even maybe an instructor, even outside of the exercise or the movement world.
Well, what you said about Mark, actually, I want to mention next because, I studied from a very young age a martial art called Taito, and I had a few different teachers, especially since I practiced in the U.S. and in Japan, and I've been lucky enough I've been able to teach on, several continents now. I've taught a bunch of people, but I wouldn't have gotten into teaching if it hadn't been for one particular teacher of mine, a guy named John Okochi, who is actually a very good friend of mine now, and from the time I was 12 or 13, I guess, he had me helping out. And he taught me how to teach. Like you said, you followed the way Mark coached. Well, John taught me a lot about, moving and about kicking and punching and, martial arts. But mostly he taught me how to unlock that whole idea of teaching and how to teach myself as well. Because there's some things that, maybe a teacher can't teach you. And you have to learn how to figure out where you want to go and teach yourself. But he was a great role model as a teacher because the thing I always admired about him is he could look at a class of 20, 30, 40 people, watch them warm up, and know what each one of them needed to do that day. Because he could see where they were in their progression and know exactly what they needed to do, watch them do a kick one time and know that they needed to practice something. And I always wanted that. Yeah. I wanted to be that good, right? Yeah. Which is kind of like with, therapy, right? When you have to be able to... sort of diagnose and see where they need to go. And that was the thing that got me fascinated in teaching. Mm-hmm. That made me want to be a teacher, which drove me to learn how to teach martial arts and drove me to be a school teacher. I decided I love teaching because of him. And I think that's in terms of my role in GMB, that's really been the biggest thing is that I'm very fanatical about how we teach.
Right.
Yes. If these guys know, because I'm a hard ass about it. Yeah. But it all goes to him.
Yeah, for a good reason. Very good reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's interesting too that when we all got together, we were doing different things, but the main thing was martial arts. I did the same thing. Started martial arts at a younger age. Different teachers throughout the years. Everybody was great. I'm not going to single anyone out in the beginning years because it was a little different.
And when you're young, it's a little different.
Yeah. But also, I think what that did was it got me thinking about athletics and the human body, really.
Yeah.
I got interested in it right away. And I started lifting weights, started exercising, started doing all these things. So that got me to that certain point. And of course, as you go through high school and all in college, what you're going to do with your life. And I knew, right, that I had to do something with that.
Yeah.
But I also knew that healthcare was something I wanted to get into. I was pre-med, right? I was thinking, I'll be a doctor. Everybody, when you're a kid and you're of a certain academic ability.
Yeah.
Doctor always comes into the right. I'll be a doctor.
Your SAT scores are good enough? Yeah, you could consider it.
Maybe, right? Maybe we could do that. But then, so I was kind of into that, getting to school. I think, okay. But then my mom actually said, we're talking about physical therapy. There's some other people. And my mom said, my friend's husband does PT. So I went in, and he's like, why don't you go in and go look at it? And then I tell you what, as soon as I went into that clinic, I was like, this is what I want to do.
Cool.
There's people in there, in particular, and I'll say his name because he helped me get into PT school, Mike Tolan. He would see something. It was just like he said. He could see somebody walk in, go in that, they just do a little movement, and he'd say, oh, that's that. Put his hands on somebody, boom. And how could you not want to be able to do that, right? And
it's like magic.
It's like magic,
Yeah.
right? And as soon as that happened, I was like, well, I'm going to do this. So I figured out what I need to do that.
Nice.
And then through all that, so therapy has been, 16 years now.
Yeah.
That's been a long time.
Yep.
So 16 years, so every patient that I've had that, the opportunity to teach. And I always had that mindset, I'm going to try and get better. I'm going to try and get better every time. One of my best friends, who I think is the greatest PT I've ever met, Brian Lee,
Brian's
over
good.
in Hawaii. Brian is awesome. And he had me thinking critically every minute of the day, every practice. We would call each other in between patients. It's crazy.
Now you guys text back and
Now,
forth.
in the beginning, those first 3 to 5 years, really focus. So I think that helped me a lot. And it's not exercises. It's not the specific things. It's that mindset of how can we make ourselves better and how can we teach better? How can we get people going? Martial arts was kind of there for a while. I take a lot of different things, wushu, taekwondo. I had my ranking in that. And I thought it was done for a while. I was like, oh, I'm done. I don't need to do it. Then I was in Hawaii and I met my teacher, Burton Richardson. JKD Unlimited, student of Guru Dan.
If you're not a martial artist, you don't know this, but Burton Richardson is legendary. He's a very, very good person.
Yeah, and that's the thing too. He's not just a legend.
Yeah,
he's just a good
great
person.
guy. Yeah.
So I started going to classes in Hawaii, and I just kept going. I'm the kind of guy, if I like it, I show up.
Yeah.
In those first 6-7 years, it's like I can count how many times I miss. And when you do that, you get noticed, right?
Yep.
Because you keep coming, and so I was very lucky. He let me participate in a few things here and there. He's like helped me learn how to teach, just like we said with Mark and your teacher. He taught me how to teach. He has that, just like it sounds like with your teachers, that really fine balance of being open to things, but also being critical and saying, okay, no.
Yep.
You test it out, and he's very big on that. He tested out everything that he teaches. It works because he's shown it.
Yeah.
And it's shown that it works for real, in sparring and drills and all of that. And if it didn't work, well, it's discarded. Yeah. Maybe it can come back later. And it's interesting because the last few years, certain things that he put away has come back because now he's found the environment where it works. And that kind of thing.
That's actually very interesting because
really
a lot of times you see something and you think, well, this doesn't work, and you just discard it, and you never return to that idea. But maybe after a while, maybe that idea develops elsewhere, or maybe you come to a different place where you can see a different value in it.
Or you now know how to teach it.
Yeah,
that's right. And that's another thing he said. It's like, even I talked to him, I think it was a couple of weeks ago. He's like, I'm pulling off things that I didn't think I could do before.
Cool.
And so that's your thing.
And that's especially impressive from a lifelong martial artist who's been teaching for decades.
But if you have that mindset that you can keep growing, and we talked about this, I actually had an interview with our friend Duff for our Alpha Posse, and we talked about the growth mindset. Yeah. If you really have that mindset that you can improve every time, and you can, maybe it's just a little bit, but you have that feeling in your head, that mindset, that growth mindset we always talk about, then it can happen. You keep your mind open enough to make that happen, but critical enough to go, well, come on, right? And so that really influenced me a lot. For everything we do here in GMB, we're always really open to things, but we're also willing to say, you know what, maybe not now. Maybe there's going to be a different place for it later, but right now, no.
Cool. So I think one of the things that we each touched on that's really interesting is that, how to teach better. And I think that that's something that's really important to us because, there's a lot of information out there. There's YouTube. If you guys haven't noticed, there's a thing called Google that has, I guess you just type any word in,
it's amazing,
and get
so cool.
a lot of information
There's
about
a lot of experts out there.
There's a lot of experts. But what I think is really, one of the things that drives us is not just to present the information, but to figure out what's the most effective way to teach it,
Is it necessary?
Yeah, is this information necessary? If it is, how can we present it in a way, not just to say, well, you should be able to do this.
Yeah. Right.
Or why can't you do this? Or I've given you the information. It's up to you to do the work now. Well, yeah, it's up to you to do the work. But it's up to the teacher to present the information in a way that the student can do the work.
And benefit from it.
And benefit from it. Yeah.
Exactly.
And so that's something that's really big for us. But I do want to kind of switch gears also and get into some of the specifics of not just our teaching mentors, but maybe where some of these movements came from.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's good. That's good.
Because we teach from a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different movements, and it's easy to say, oh, well, that's capoeira, or that's gymnastics, or that's b-boy, or yoga, or whatever. And one of the things that we've been talking about since we've been in person here for the past few days is, the first time you see something is kind of like an imprint in your mind, right? And if you see something in a martial arts context, every time you see that movement after that, you're going to think of it as like a kick or
from a particular system.
And it's your first contact is like a filter, right? If that's your context, that you start seeing things through that lens from then on. If you're from Brazil and you see yoga, you think it's gymnastica,
right? Or even a good example, and this came up this weekend, was that like the way here in GMB when we do our plank, it's with a hollow body. Mm-hmm. Now we put out a picture or video of maybe me or someone else demonstrating this hollow body plank, and someone from yoga said, "You're doing it wrong."
Yeah.
And
You're doing it wrong.
And the thing
You're
is,
doing it wrong.
Unfortunately, they don't know what we're trying to accomplish with that, right?
Yeah.
But they have that mindset of, okay, this is where I'm coming from, so it's got to be this way, or it's got to be this style or something.
Yeah,
I love
and
that.
not long ago,
you're doing it wrong.
You're doing it wrong.
Well, and you showed a cartwheel on a video not long ago. A guy posted a comment like capoeira. Well, no, I don't think there was any music. There was no opponent. You weren't wearing white pants.
The berimbau wasn't.
There was no berimbau. It was not capoeira.
Yeah, and another thing too, I've never done capoeira, so that
it would be funny to see you try to do capoeira.
Yeah, it would actually. Yeah.
So let's talk about some of those things, because we've got gymnastics, that's an obvious influence. We've got martial arts, that's an obvious influence. We've got yoga. Jarlo, definitely a lot of yoga background.
A lot of my primary teacher is over in Hawaii. It was a few years ago I started with her, Kathy Louise Broda, over in Purple Yoga. If you're ever in Hawaii, just drop into her class. It's well worth it. Mm-hmm. And we were talking a lot about that today because I did an extra session for these people over here at DKB Fitness.
The lovely ladies.
Yeah, the lovely
showing
ladies
a lot
of
of those
DKB.
concepts that I learned from her. Mm-hmm. So I'm really informed by that. Mm-hmm. Now, to say that, I can't say that I'm a yoga teacher, though. Can't say it. Because a lot of it, and I said this before, if you're going to do yoga, you should do yoga.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
If you're going to do yoga because you think that's the best way to stretch out, it's probably not right.
Yeah.
Right? Because that's not their intention, and they'll tell you that too. Yoga isn't about stretching or flexibility. Yoga is about doing yoga. Yoga is about doing those things that are yoga in yoga for being a yoga person, for being a yogi. So if that's what you want, then you need to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's funny because you're like, oh yeah, yoga is stretching and flexibility, but that's only a little bit of a part of it, right? So a lot of that's informed by her, and of course I have to adjust it for certain things because of the things I know from therapy. That doesn't mean that it's wrong the way that it was done before, but we have certain goals that we have to meet, and so I'm able to change it. So that's good that I'm able to change it because I'm not a yoga teacher and I won't get in trouble for changing it, right?
Right.
But it needs to be done, and it's done. I think it's done the right way because it's been extraordinarily helpful for a lot of people, but also it makes sense clinically in my respect.
And so it's a thing that you're drawing on a yoga influence, but it's not in a yoga context.
That's right.
You're learning from yoga and applying it to, fitness.
That's right.
And whatever the students are needing.
That's right.
It's a different purpose,
Yeah, it's like with martial arts. Okay, martial arts, fighting, right?
Right.
Not really.
Hopefully you're not fighting very often.
That's right, yeah.
It should be a part of it. I think.
Yeah.
I think it should be a part of it. Yeah. Some people in different martial arts say it doesn't have to be, but I think it does. But it doesn't have to be all of it.
Yeah.
And there's no way. And if it's all of it, then how could we be drawing from that influence and teaching people in these seminars? Because
Right.
we're not teaching them how to hold a knife and stick it into somebody or kicking, but we know from the movements and from the things we've learned from it that we're able to translate that into better movement patterns for these people. So martial arts is very good for that. Obviously.
So, it's the same thing with gymnastics too, because obviously we teach a lot of things that are related to gymnastics. We use gymnastic rings and other apparatus, but we don't
We
do
are gymnasts, and if we wanted to be gymnast or become a gymnast, we would go to a gymnastics center and learn from a person who only teaches gymnastics, and that's not what it is. So our purpose is different, therefore we're not focused on gymnastics.
Yeah. We're not using the gymnastic rings to perform a rings routine in a gymnastics competition.
Right.
We're using them to build strength and mobility for things that non-gymnasts need in daily life, right?
Exactly.
And some gymnastics movements are particularly well suited for that.
Right.
Yes.
That's yes.
And some aren't.
Yes.
Some are not.
That's right.
Yeah. And that's why we can choose from different disciplines, and it's not that we just think, we have to have that in here. No, it just matches for what we want to do with our purpose here in GMB, and that's why we're using it.
And it's also, too, when we're talking about this, too, it's also that we won't be so, when we're talking about how there's other people doing other things, right? So we don't have to be so defensive about, we don't do that because we do this,
exactly.
Right? Right?
If somebody wants to practice a particular sport or practice another kind of discipline, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's their goal.
Right.
It's not our job to say what your goal should be.
That's
right.
But given your goal, if you ask us for advice, we're going to try to give you the benefit of what we do know.
Yeah. And then we know different people doing different things.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So if you want to go and you want to do barbell squats or work on your deadlifts, hey, do it,
Yeah.
And we're the
We'll
first people
send you to
say.
JC or
we'll
Matt
send you to-
or somebody, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Even within like the body weight community, how can we really be competitors with different people?
Yeah.
Like, and it's, next week,
Yep.
you're going to go with Mike Fitch of
Fitch,
Animal
good
Flow,
example.
Global Bodyweight Training.
Yep.
Right? He's a perfect example
Yeah.
of someone taking from a lot of different influences and doing a really good job.
And being very upfront about the fact that he's not teaching any of those things, yet he draws from all of them to teach his own thing.
Right.
And he's very good.
Which he says he did not invent.
Yeah.
He
He didn't invent squatting.
No, he didn't.
No.
Who did?
I thought we did.
I thought so too, but apparently
I thought we invented parallettes.
I think he invented P-bars.
P-bars.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the pommel horse, but see, that's an example of the things because we used it, but we decided, we're not gonna, use it for now.
Yeah, we did have requests for a pommel horse
We
program.
did actually.
Yeah, we did, but it doesn't fit in the dining room very well, so we decided not to do that one.
So we uninvented that.
We uninvented. What did we invent? We invented something.
I'm pretty sure we didn't invent anything.
I'm trying to think. No.
Oh man, we gotta say we able to invent something, right? That cracks me up all the time.
We've got some proprietary exercises, don't we?
Yeah.
Some patent pending processes.
Cracks me up.
Well, we don't.
Yeah. There's no.
I don't think anybody does.
yeah, there's
Let's
not-
just say that out
The
loud
movement's
right
not
now.
original. It's the expression of the person showing how they want to do it.
It's just like we were saying today. Like you learn how to do crab from a slightly overweight Japanese.
Yeah, no, I learned how to do backflips from a 50-pound overweight Japanese guy who was not a gymnast, But I had a pretty good backflip for quite a number of years, despite that challenge, and it happens.
And these weren't animal movements that you learned.
They were not animal. Well, I did learn to do duck walks and rabbit hops when I was a
ducks and
child.
rabbits.
But no, they're not called rabbits. They're called kangaroos.
Yeah.
See, and that's because it really doesn't matter what the name is.
I think if it was
It's movement,
primal,
right?
you would have done better.
I think so too. Primal is the way to go.
We're joking, but the point is, you did a lot of these things from a very young age.
Yeah.
I did a lot of things from a very young age. And, if we put out a video of us showing a movement that I learned at age 7, somebody will say, you should really give credit to somebody else, right?
Yeah.
Or,
Gymnastica natural.
oh, that's Gymnastica, or, oh, that's Animal Flow, or that's, No, it's a movement that people have been doing for probably hundreds or thousands of years that I learned before I knew what fitness was.
I'm pretty sure my kids learned how to crawl from a guru somewhere.
From a guru.
Probably.
Yeah.
Probably.
Right.
But I think it was like from God himself that blessed them with that, movement and
Maybe.
came in a dream.
Well, they're twins, so when one of them saw it in a dream, the other one did too.
So that's how it
Special.
works. Special.
Okay, so before we get nutty here, we're going to wrap this up. But the point is, all this stuff has been out there, and we all learn from different sources, and there's a lot of people teaching great stuff.
Very good stuff.
Yes.
Some great teachers out there, and if you've listened to us at all, you know that we really appreciate great teaching. So find a great teacher. It doesn't really matter, where things come from, because it's all the same. You just want to find somebody that has a passion for the good stuff.
Yeah,
right?
And I want to add to that is, Andy mentioned to find a good coach. And a good coach is a good coach for you.
Yes.
Not necessarily what everyone says, this is the greatest coach out there. He might or she might be the greatest coach in the world for everyone else. But if that coach doesn't match where you want to go or what you want to do.
So important.
Yeah. And so, it doesn't really matter what you do. It's how you interact with that coach and what that coach can do for you.
Do you need a Nobel Literature Laureate to teach you creative writing? No. You can probably learn enough about basic composition from your high school teacher. You don't need to learn from Maya Angelou.
Yeah.
You don't need the best person in the world to teach you basic stuff. You just don't.
Yeah.
So find somebody who's a great fit for you.
It might take some time.
It might take some time.
Yeah, a lot of searching.
And it might not be us.
That's right.
But if it is, get in touch and we'll help you out.
That's right.
So thanks for watching and listening and being a part of the posse. We're always here for you.